Right, hello there. Welcome to episode 2 of the by now multi-award winning Rumblecast TV. It's a bit of a special on the fly edition because obviously we've got big fights on Friday night rather than the normal, as well as the normal Saturday night fights. I'm joined via Zoom by my good friend Blair. Blair, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, mate. Yeah, all good. Nice to be joining you remotely. Like you say, an on the fly episode because we've got lots to cram in. We'll also be picking up tomorrow with a special episode, just kind of covering the things that we don't get to cover today. But yeah, all good, mate. All ready for it.
Right, okay, so let's get straight to it. So first things first, let's have a little chat about the big fight from last week. So Dubois versus Joyce. If you check back to episode 1, some genius even picked the round that Joyce would win in. I must say, even I was still a little bit surprised by that, but that was my best guess. What did you think of the fight, first of all?
Well, yeah, look, congratulations. Well called. You should have had some money on that one for sure. And you're definitely informing my tipping or my bet sheet for this week. But what did I think to the fight on the whole? I thought it was a great fight. I really enjoyed it. I must say, I know there's been a lot of talk about did Dubois quit? Yeah, of course he did. Absolutely he did. But it was the right thing to do. But still, that doesn't diminish any of Joe Joyce's victory in any way, shape, or form. I really liked the fight. It was a nice, clean, professionally handled fight. Yeah, it didn't live up to the billing from the Queensberry bunch, but these things happen. These things are, they're going to happen. Joe Joyce just proved that he is clearly under most people's radar and packs a hell of a lot more than most people think he does. So yeah, that's my in a nutshell take, buddy.
Agreed. I think we said last week really that Joe Joyce has been underestimated. I think he's much better than he looks. I think that's clear. From speaking to people, listening to people speak that have been in the ring with him, the word they use is claustrophobic. He makes the ring feel tiny and like he's on top of you. And very few other fighters have ever been able to make somebody, particularly a great big heavyweight, feel like that. And I think that happened to Dubois in that fight a little bit. I'm not going to get into the debate about whether he quit or not. I think it's clear what happened. I don't blame him either. He could have lost an eye, and he wasn't going to win the fight. More importantly, from there, it was only going to. It was swinging more and more in Joyce's favour, and I think he saved himself from a good hiding. Could have saved his eyesight. So and as somebody that's never stepped into a boxing ring, I don't get to call fighters quitters. I agree with Eddie Hearn on that point. Only fighters can really make that call. Some have called him a quitter. Some have come out and said, well, no, he's got to stop. What has been interesting is the war that it sparked, as you'd expect, between Eddie and Frank. Eddie making comments about him having quit. And then Coogan said, well, it was on, Coogan on an IFL interview said, well, he's fractured his eye socket. And Eddie says, has he? Has he? I've not seen an X-ray. That put Frank Warren's blood pressure up to 3 billion. He was literally broadcasting with the IFL TV half an hour later. He must have demanded the interview from what I can tell, and he's now demanding apologies, etc. And I can understand why he's annoyed. At the same time, this is the same man who was singing songs rejoicing when Dillian White got beat. This is the same man that said that Anthony Joshua quit in New York. Again, I don't blame him for either of those things either. If that was it.
People in glass houses and all that.
Yeah, I agree. So that all got a bit silly, but I love that. That's it's one of the great entertainments in boxing currently is the silliness between them two. I think they're both a pair of plonkers. I think Eddie Hearn's I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. The smugometer was off the fucking scale, and as a result, old Frank's shoulders were doing this, and his fucking eyes were going, and he was ready to boil over. So yeah, it was worth it for that. But yeah, ultimately, good fight. Went the way I thought it would. I suspect that Dubois is going to be out for probably a year or so because he's going to need an operation if it's a fractured eye socket. And I think Joyce will probably get a crack at a vacant title next year now.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And I mean, yeah, interesting point. You go back to sort of saying other fighters described him as claustrophobic. And he really is a unit. I was not expecting. I mean, I've seen pictures of the guy. I've seen him training. Unless I'd seen him stood against Dubois, I never would have guessed he was such a big unit. So that whole claustrophobic thing, I really understand, definitely.
Yeah, and I think his non-punching activity, as they call it, is the thing that makes it so claustrophobic for you.
So smart, constantly chipping away, stopping you from being able to go where you want to, constantly little probing jabs and punches to just sort of test your mettle, unsettle you, and score. You know, lots of scoring punches in amongst all.
Yeah.
Really impressive.
Agreed. So yeah, very impressive from Joe Joyce.
Yeah, I've got to say, Mark, in my opinion, it really did expose, even after 15 fights, 14 knockouts, we saw it with Joshua. He got to about that stage, and then there really was the need for experience and mileage on the clock, the need to go into deeper rounds and learn some ringcraft. And I think we're looking at exactly the same story with Dubois.
Yeah, agreed. He's and much like Joshua, he's learning on the job, isn't he? And because he's such a hot prospect, they move quickly with them. But he'll be back. He's young, and as long as there's no serious sort of damage to the eye, he'll be back. The other fight from last weekend was, of course, Mr. Tyson and Mr. Jones Jr., which again I'm not going to pay too much attention to. Okay, what did you think of that?
Well, look, going back to what we said before, I was I was morbidly curious about it. I actually don't think the fight was that bad, but still, I think from a moral standpoint, I'm not sure. I'm not sure that kind of thing should continue. I don't think Roy was as prepared as he thought it was going to be. Mike Tyson looked like he could go on and win a heavyweight championship as far as I'm concerned. Mike looked like he took it really seriously. He looked like he was trying to throw some hurtful punches at times, but that's just my view. I know they're both gentlemen. They both agreed not to throw really hurtful punches, but it seemed like Tyson loved it, was living every minute of it, just like he was back in his heyday. And to be honest, I mean, he didn't look like a 19-year-old Mike Tyson, but he certainly looked like a sharper Mike Tyson than we've seen even in the latter days of his professional career, if you see what I'm saying.
Yeah, agreed. I think it was a spectacle. They clearly put on a great show with all the hip hop artists and various other things. It was a night of entertainment. Do I want to see it again? No, thank you. No. What I will say, something that I do think we do need to talk about, is this YouTube boxing, the Jake Paul and Nate Robinson fight that was on that bill. I've got no problem with Jake Paul having fights if he wants to, Logan Paul having fights if he wants to, KSI, Anson, Gibb, all those guys, if they want to, and if they take it seriously. But when you have a situation where, in my opinion, that Nate Robinson had been nowhere near a boxing gym, it didn't look like he'd ever seen a boxing fight, and I think it's dangerous. I mean, he charging straight onto somebody who can clearly whack, and I don't like to, it looks dangerous. And then when perhaps the referee should have stopped it after the second knockdown, and then you see why, because he ends up landing on his face. I mean, you don't see that very often.
You don't know. It was a disgraceful knockout. I agree with you. If you're going to do that, then you need to be fighting people of equal caliber. There needs to be some kind of a very strict division there, so that you don't get a situation where, and again, I absolutely agree with you, Robinson didn't look like he had any experience in a ring at all. I mean, the way he was charging in and charging on his toes, I mean, you could have virtually blown him over running in like that. It was incredible. And I mean, I'm not saying Jake Paul looked like he takes it seriously, but, lining yourself up some kid to fight that's never been in a ring before is, it's kind of a hollow victory. So, Jake, you YouTubers, please, if you want to be boxers, join the divisions, do the work, don't try and circumvent things. You still make the money, you'll still make the huge pay-per-view tickets. It's just, you can't be putting kids in there and beating them up like that. It was disgraceful.
No, I mean, the thing is, the traditional route's not going to work for them, because they want fortunes to fight. And you're not going to, if they want to do it seriously, in my opinion, they should do the same as everybody else has to do, and start with the smaller hall shows, lower down the bill. These guys are headlining events, and I think you're probably going to get one or two of these fights a year on an undercard or as a co-main event on huge events, because they are generating absolute fucking buckets of money.
And look, there's nothing wrong with that. Go straight for the pay-per-view. If you've got a division that can bring in that kind of money and that kind of interest, go for it, but make it a division. Make it regulated in that sense. If you pepper it full of superstars like your KSIs, Logan Pauls, Jake Pauls, even if they're all at the same weight, we don't know, even if they're able to fight together. But if you peppered it with that, and then you put, young and emerging talent in it, you made it a proper division, I think, you're still going to do your pay-per-view numbers, probably more, It legitimizes it. It makes it safer. It gives it a lot more control. That's the way forward. None of this ad hoc.
But you can't. But no, none of that's possible though. We already have weight divisions. We already have professional boxing. If you want to take part in professional boxing in a weight division, you have to do the same as everybody else. Get a license, train, whatever. And you know, to be taken seriously, in my mind, they need to move up the rankings. They're only going to do that by fighting proper boxers. You know, fighting an ex-NBA star isn't going to move you up the rankings. So if he's telling you, you know, if he's staring straight down camera one, telling you he's taking it seriously, then, you know, I've got a proposition for him. Go and fight. I don't know. Go and fight Tommy Fury next and see what boxing's really like.
Wow, that'd be interesting, wouldn't it?
Well, he's only had a handful of fights. He's very inexperienced himself, but that's the difference between what I consider somebody that's a boxer, a real fighter, somebody that's been in the gym all his life and understands boxing and what's, you know, what the risks are and what the skills are that are required, as opposed to somebody that's got such a huge following. They can put a record out that makes them a musician. They can make a film that makes them a film star. They can go, you know, they can go and fight and sell out arenas. In my personal opinion, that doesn't make you a musician or a rock star or a film star or a fucking boxer. So, you know, personally, I'd be happy if it never happened again, but it's going to happen because it generates such a lot of money.
No, I agree with you. You can't call yourself a boxer. You can't call yourself a sprinter if you're not a sprinter. You know, if you don't live the life, it's the same, bro. I absolutely agree with you. But unfortunately, like you say, we are going to see it again. So let's slap the fucking regulation on it now. Let's try and at least make it as safe as it possibly can be. You know, wrap them up in cotton wool if we need to, just to make it safe. Whatever it is, whatever it's.
Yeah, and see now that's a better idea, I think, in many ways, because if they're going to have these sort of exhibition style fights, I don't understand if Mike Tyson has to wear bigger gloves and fight 2-minute rounds, why Jake Paul and some basketball player are allowed to wear, you know, whatever they were, 10-ounce gloves and fight 3-minute rounds. That makes no sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense. Because
the two guys that are having this regulation forced on them are, they know more, they've forgotten more about the sport of boxing than most people will ever know. You know, and I'm not sure. I hope we don't see too much of it. And I hope it doesn't ending because of something terrible, really.
That's the danger, isn't it? Well, yeah, let's fuck that off then. Let's not discuss that anymore. We've made our thoughts known about that. Load of old piss in a tin.
Right, okie dokie. One thing I did want to add actually was that the undercard of that Mike Tyson and Roy Jones card was absolutely shocking, except for, brilliantly, the fight that was on free to air just before it went pay-per-view. That was a sensational fight. They did drop a bit of a bollock because just as the referee was, just as the announcer was giving the scores, it cut off and went to pay-per-view. So it took me ages to find out who'd actually won. I thought it was a draw. So yeah, that's that was the only thing that was worth watching. That and Snoop Dogg, obviously.
Of course, the Master Snoop, MC.
Yeah. So that brings us. That's sort of last week's stuff covered. The reason for this sort of on the fly zoomy one is because we've got a fight tonight, a huge fight tonight. Between Billy Joe Saunders and Martin Murray. Martin Murray, of course, who this will be his 5th time challenging for a world title. Having rewatched those fights, he won 2 of them. I don't know how he's not a 2-time world champion, or at least a 1-time world champion.
Well, let's not go into partisan judges at the moment, my friend. That's something for another episode. But we all
we could,
go those ways.
That could take many episodes, couldn't it, to get through? But anyway, so Martin Murray's. It's a real challenge. I think it's the last roll of the dice for him. He's at the end of his career. He's not going, you know, if he doesn't win the world title tonight, he's probably not going to win one. And he's up against, in my opinion, possibly the best in and around that weight division. I don't know. I'm not sure yet about Billy at super middleweight. In my opinion, he was the best middleweight in the world. His 2 fights at super middleweight, 1 to win the title, 1 to defend it, have not been electrifying performances. But whichever way you look at it, I'm sick of hearing about how he blows hot and cold and he can put in this performance or that performance. Look at his record. Nobody's even got close to beating him yet. So it is what it is. I expect no different tonight. I think he looks in incredible shape. He realises that the big, huge money fights against Canelo and Golovkin and people like that depend on him putting on a show. So I think that's what we'll get tonight. I'm looking forward to a great fight. What's your thoughts? What's your prediction? Let's have your prediction.
It's Billy Joe for me. Like you say, his record speaks for itself, my friend. And I do think there is some merit. I know you say you're sick of hearing it, but I do think it goes back to a particular sort of, I think, a particular boxing IQ. You get out of these guys the particular the fighters that I'm thinking of, the likes of Tyson Fury, Billy Joe Saunders, you get out of these guys exactly what you put in front of them. So yeah, if your Ferrari's capable of doing 300 miles an hour versus the Vauxhall Corsa that can do 60, you ain't going to drive at 300 miles an hour. You're going to drive at 70, and I think that's what you get, brother. I really.
I think I would go along with that as well. Billy Joe tends to do enough to beat what's in front of him for sure.
Absolutely. Very clever boxer, very smart, lots of intelligence in the ring, and yeah, just a great all-rounder. I mean, sadly, one of those boxers that isn't on the lips of everybody that's talking about boxing, really, in my opinion.
No, I agree. Doesn't have the profile that he deserves.
Yeah, absolutely, deserves a much bigger profile, and yeah, I'm calling this soundly Billy Joe, round 6.
You're going for round 6. You think you'll stop him in 6? Okie dokie.
Question.
Yeah, I think that might be about right.
Hey, so your predictions then, my friend, what do you think about it?
Something similar. I think Billy Joe will stop him in and around the mid rounds.
Yep.
So on the undercard, you've got a couple of kids that Billy Joe looks after.
Yeah. Okay. Himself, yeah.
Yeah, in Lewis Edmondson and Dante Dixon. I don't know much about Edmondson. Dante Dixon, if he's half as good as people are saying he is, he's certainly worth a look. Those 2 fights, I think, are on Facebook before the main card starts.
Interesting.
Then we've got James Tennyson and O'Reilly, and what I think has become some sort of eliminator for the WBA title. I think they're both quite highly ranked, so this will put one or the other of them at number 2, number 3, something like that. Okay, so that looks like it might be a tear up. Yep. You've got Zach Parker, who I think is Billy Joe's mandatory, so that's going to get called sooner or later. He's a lad from Derby, actually, our sort of East Midlands neck of the woods. Absolutely. I don't know too much about him, but he's in a tough fight as well. Okay. So it's a decent card full of sort of people in and around that weight division.
Yeah, absolutely. What time do the festivities kick off, my friend?
I think 7 o'clock's the main card on Sky, and I think you can expect Billy Joe and Martin Murray about 10, half 10, something like that.
Brilliant stuff. Well, I reckon we've about covered it, don't you, my friend?
Yeah, of course we'll pick it up when we get back to the to our normal circumstances in episode 2B of
episode 2
of Rumblecast TV. But we just wanted to get in the mention of the Billy Joe card because it's worth a look.
It certainly is, yeah, absolutely. And by the time we release 2.2, which will be tomorrow evening, you will have already seen this, but you'll get to see our breakdown of the Billy Joe fight and our preview of the upcoming Saturday fights.
Yes, we've got, of course, Anthony Yard and Lyndon Arthur. That's the big headline showdown there. That could be a hell of a fight.
Oh, well, I'm expecting it, my friend, but let's not blow what we've got to speak about tomorrow. Let's wish everybody a safe and happy night. Tune into the boxing, 7 o'clock on Sky Sports 1, I believe. Yeah.
I don't know what the channels are called anymore. They're all called crazy things, aren't they? Sky Sports Arena and Sky Sports this.
You'll find it on Sky Sports.
Yeah, it's on Sky.
We could put something there for you to click on, take you straight to Sky, but we're not going to.
No, not until we get the check. So if you're listening, Eddie and Adam Smith, we're not that expensive. Just bit more expensive than Coog.
Get into it. Anyway, hope you've enjoyed watching us. It's been a pleasure talking to you about tonight's fights, my friend. Looking forward to dissecting those with you tomorrow and releasing a fuller cast. But yeah, thanks for tuning in, guys. Over to you, Mark, to sign off.
Always a pleasure to catch up with you, Blair, about the boxing. We do this anyway, which is why we started making this show. And yeah, thanks for anybody that's listening, watching, liking, subscribing. Remember what I said last week, don't send me your money yet. I haven't worked out how to launder it. And we'll see you tomorrow for episode 2B.2/X.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Thanks, guys. Take care. See you tomorrow. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share.